Hello everyone. This is part one of a series of videos on building and building with stainless steel. So in this very first video, I'm going to assume that you're either totally new to building or relatively inexperienced with building or new to building with stainless steel. So I'm just going to talk about everything from the ground up, the very beginning of how to build a coil. So the things you'll need, mod and something to build on, obviously. You'll need something to wrap your wire around. This is a jig, but you can use a screwdriver, drill bit, anything like that. You'll need wire. This is 26 gauge stainless steel. You'll need wick. This is rayon. Most people use cotton. You'll need a pair of tweezers. And you'll need some scissors or pliers, something like that. So to get started, I'm going to wrap two coils exactly the same. I'm just going to do a beginner style build. When most people ask me what kind of build they should start on or what I think is a good beginner build, I always tell them a spaced coil because it's the easiest to build. You can make mistakes with it and it'll still come out perfectly fine. So just the way that it performs and the ease of building and the ease of installation, I think it's the best way for a beginner to start out. So that's what I'm going to do in this video, is dual coil space build setup. It's going to be very similar to the video that I made about the Velocity, an introduction to the Velocity dripper, except I'm going to be talking more about the build this time than the dripper. But I'm doing relatively the same build as I did in that video. So to start out, you just want to kind of trap one side with your finger and wrap it going this way away from you. And count the wraps as you wrap around. This is going to be 10 wraps. You can use steam engine. I'll put a link in the description to kind of figure out what kind of resistance you want. I'll talk a little bit more about what kind of resistance you want with stainless steel later on when we get to firing it. So I'm going to do 10 wraps spaced. And the good thing about spaced is that you don't have to be perfect with it. You don't have to be super neat. You can just kind of wrap it around and make it work. And I'll show you what I mean. So let's just start here. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I don't have these evenly spaced at all. It's kind of ugly, but that's okay. Because this metal is springy, I can just kind of squish it down there and pull with these fingers at the same time while I'm squishing. And as you can see, it kind of just spaced itself out there perfectly. So that one's ready. It's much easier than making where the wires touch each other a contact coil. Now I'm going to make one more exactly like the first one. It has to be the same number of wraps. You can't do more on one side than the other because they won't heat up the same. You want them to be exactly the same. I'll do this one really quick. Sorry about that. So once again, I don't have them evenly spaced. It's ugly, but it doesn't matter. And then that's why this is good for a beginner. It can let you get the experience of just seeing what it feels like to wrap the coils and get a little bit of experience building, but it's forgiving enough that it doesn't really matter. So now they're evenly spaced, now that I've squished it while I'm pulling with these fingers. Clip off this excess. And now I'm ready to install them. You always want to put on this dripper anyway, you always want to put the low post in the low hole. Sorry, the low leg. I made the same mistake in the other video. The low leg. Alright, now I kind of try and keep it fairly close to the posts just while I'm tightening it down. So I can pick it up. Okay. And I'm just kind of, with my fingers, holding it in place, making sure it doesn't move too much. I've got it nice and tight on there. Hopefully you can see that I've got one in the low side on this side and one in the high side on this side. So obviously that's going to be different if you're not using a two-post style deck, but I always recommend that someone that's new to building start on this kind of deck because it's so much easier and there's plenty of room. It's just not as hard to build on as other style decks. So now that I've got it tightened down, I can just kind of wiggle these back and forth. And one thing I want to look out for, I want to make sure that these coils aren't moving at all when I move this side. If they start moving, that's a good indication to me that it's not tightened down enough. So I'm moving this back and forth and I'm not seeing any movement on the other side, so that's good. And I just keep wiggling it until it comes off. I'm moving it both up and down and left and right just to kind of make sure it's not moving. Okay. Now I do the exact same thing on the other side. I like to try and keep the wire on the drill bit or the jig or whatever you're using when you're first installing it. It keeps the wire in place in the right shape as you're tightening it down and just getting it into place. Kind of have to do manual focus, sorry about that. So I've installed this exactly the same as I did the other one. Just making sure that I can still get it through there, that the shape is still good. Now I'm going to remove this side. Still keeping an eye out to make sure that the coil is not moving so that I know I haven't tightened down enough. Come on. I'm knocking stuff over. I'm not seeing any movement, so that's good. Alright, before we start dry firing it, I want to try and get them lined up. They're not even. I make sure to use my jig or the drill bit or whatever you're using, screwdriver, to hold it in place as I move it up. Line it up like that. And I also want to make sure that it's not touching these posts. You'll get a short if it touches them, so I'll just kind of scoot it out just a little bit. There. So I'm sure that it's not touching now. The only point of contact you want to have is the leg that goes in the hole, nothing else. So I'm going to do the same thing on this side, make sure that they're evened up. Pull it out just a little bit. Okay, it looks pretty good. And another reason why I chose the space coil is that when it comes time to fire it, which is probably the harder part of building the coils for a beginner, you really don't have to work with it very much. With the contact coil, you have to kind of squeeze it and mess with it and play with it for a while to get it working right. And space coils kind of normally just work right out of the box for the most part. So I'll turn this on. Something you always want to check, either with the ohm meter or with the mod that you're using, is the resistance of it. This comes in at 0.33. So what I can do is just kind of move it around just a little bit. I'm sorry about the focus, it keeps coming out of focus. Move it around just a little bit. Check the resistance again. It's the same. So, and because 0.33 is a fairly high number for this wraps, that's about what I expect from Steam Engine. I'll put a link in the description for Steam Engine so you can kind of figure out what your coils should be. And just remember to divide the number that it gives you in half for a dual coil setup. I want to turn this way down. This is way too high. That's what I would be firing at the end point, but not to start off with, not to dry burn it. An advantage of stainless steel is that you can dry burn it. You build it just like you would Kanthal. You can't dry burn nickel or titanium, but you can with stainless steel and still use it in temperature control. So that's one of the things that I really like about it. It builds just like Kanthal, but performs much better. Okay, so I've got it turned down pretty low, and now I'm going to dry fire it and look. The main things I'm looking for are hot spots. If one spot starts glowing way more than the others, I want to stop burning it right away. And you're ultimately trying to get it looking like it starts heating up from the outside and spreads outward, or sorry, from the inside and spreads outwards. So you want it to glow from the inside out, and you don't want any kind of hot spot. So we'll dry fire it and see what it looks like. You can tell I'm just kind of letting off of it. I don't just want to hold it down. Okay, so because it's a space coil, it kind of just worked right away. See how it's starting from the middle and working its way out, and they're very, very even. That's exactly what you want to see. You want both coils to heat up at the same rate. You want them to look the same, and you can kind of tell that it started at the middle and worked its way out. So I'll do it a couple more times so you can see. It's hissing a little bit because I still had some juice in there. Yep, that looks pretty good. If yours doesn't look like that starting out, what you want to do is get your tweezers and just kind of scrape along it like that. Just brush it. I don't know why that works, but it does. So just kind of brush at it until you get them even. And mine look pretty good. All right, we're almost done with this. Just put in a wick and we're ready to go. Building really is just about practice. This I think is the easiest build to start with, and once you build this a couple times and get used to the different things that can happen and what it should and shouldn't look like, then you can move on to the more complicated coils and you know, I didn't start with a space coil when I first started building, and I kind of regret that now. I didn't really know much about it when I started, so I started out making contact coils, and it ended up being a lot harder for me than if I had just made space coils from the beginning. So that's why when people ask me what they should start with, I always say a space coil. And I still, for the most part, build space coils today, just because I think they give better flavor. They're easier to build and they give better flavor, so why would I not go with that? So obviously with some builds you can't do that, but I still prefer to have my coils a little bit spaced on any build that I do. One thing you have to be aware of when you're wicking it with space coils is that they're not quite as sturdy as contact coils, so you need to be careful putting the wick in that it doesn't disturb the coil too much. I don't know if you can see it, but it's moving the inside just a little bit, but that's okay. But I don't want it to be disturbing the coil too much. Because if you put a wick in and it's messing the coil up too much, then it'll kind of undo the work that you did scraping at the coil and getting it firing right. And once the cotton is on there, you can't dry burn it again, obviously, because you'll burn the cotton. So you need to have it set up perfectly and then try and put the cotton on without disturbing it too much. And once you get a build that you like on there, you can leave it on there and just put a different wick in there. And you want to put just enough cotton to kind of touch the bottom of the deck. Just like that. Leave a little pocket underneath there open so the air can get to the coil. Now it's time to juice it up and try it out. I also recommend that people start building on drippers because they're much more forgiving than RTAs. They're easier to wick, they're easier to build on, there's more room, and it's easier all around. RTAs are difficult. So as you can see, I don't use a whole lot of wick. I just kind of use a medium amount because that's the way I prefer it. I feel like it's wasting juice to use too much wick. Okay, I'm going to do one last little sweep of getting that cotton to the side. And there we go. That's our first build in there. And it looks pretty perfect. If you do your first build and it comes out like this, you should be proud. Because my first build definitely did not come out like that. But I was not very good at it starting out, but I just kind of stuck with it and you get used to it. So we're still at 0.33. We know that's not a short. That's about where it should be. The resistance would be very, very low if it was a short. And that's something that you always want to check again once you put the chimney on, just in case you have the coils way out and it's touching the chimney or something, and it'll short out. You don't ever want to fire it if it's below about 0.15 and it's obviously shorting out. So now I'm going to turn it up and give it a try. See how it goes. Before I do that, I'll talk real briefly about the watts that I choose for stainless steel. It's way more forgiving than Kanthal is as far as what wattage you choose to fire it at, depending on the resistance. So if the resistance is above 0.5, you don't really want to go above about 50. But it's a lot more forgiving than Kanthal is as far as the wattage that you choose. I have a build that's 0.19 and I can fire it at 45 watts just fine. But I wouldn't be able to do that with Kanthal. So it really just comes down to the temperature that you like it at, which wattage you prefer, really, what gives you the best flavor. So one of the reasons why I like stainless steel is that it's flexible like that. You can kind of just pick the wattage that you want. Obviously, that doesn't apply if you're using a mechanical mod. I'm just talking about a regulated device where you can change the wattage. So I like it around the 50 range, which is why I just went ahead and turned it up to that. I know that 0.33 will be fine at 51 watts. Yeah, let's give it a try. Got the airflow a little too open. Looking good. The more you do this, you'll get a feel for when it needs to be re-dripped. The flavor starts to drop off. And also, using stainless steel, because you can use it in temperature control mode, and that's how temperature control mode works. The resistance changes. So I had it at 0.33, and because I just fired it, it went up, and now it's going back down because it's cooling down. But if you see while I fire it, it's going up. That's okay. Kanthal doesn't do that, but don't freak out. There's nothing wrong with your build if it does that. I've been asked that a lot. It's supposed to do that. The resistance changes as it heats up, and that's how temperature control works. The mod can read the resistance change and determine what temperature it is from that. So nickel and titanium and stainless steel all do that, and that's normal. For a beginner build, that's excellent performance. I think it tastes great. Alright, so there's your first build. I hope that you guys like it, and if you have any questions or problems, just leave a comment or send us an email, and I'll do my best to help you guys out. Be sure to check out the second part in this series. We're going to be doing a beginner build on the Griffin RTA. Thanks.